Hi gang, welcome to What's the Worst That Could Happen. I'm your host Abby Whitaker, and today I've brought on my amazing friend Georgia, who is going to hit me with some of the hard questions about my background, what I do, what I've learnt in business. So I'm so excited to share that with you, and hopefully you gain lots of insights from it. So I'm just going to give her the reins and let her take charge, which is not something I'm used to too much, but let's do it.
I am so excited. Firstly, I just admire Abby so much because of your business sense. You're incredible. And when Abby reached out to do this podcast, I am helping her create it. And within like a week's notice, she was like, we're doing it. It's on. And like, let's get it together. And I was like, that's amazing. There is not many people that would be able to do what you have done in under a week and just been like, let's dive into it. Let's throw myself into it, which is just incredible. So I'm so excited to talk to you and get your business sense today. So let's start by from the outside. We know a little bit about what you do, but can you tell us like friend to friend what you do, what your days look like, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that I've got the three, almost four studios, the Teacher Training Academy, the app, the mentoring business.
Yeah.
My day-to-day looks a lot like,
It's a hard one.
Yeah, it is a hard one. It's very different every day, which I think is why I've stayed within this industry for so long. Before I did what I'm doing now, I was in marketing, and I found it. Every job I had, I just got a little bit bored.
Yeah.
So with this, I get to wear all the different hats, and I've really learnt to embrace all the different hats and be okay with the fact that the saying is the jack of all trades, the master of none. And there's actually another part to that quote, which is something about it being good to be the jack of all trades.
Yeah, okay.
Which lots of people told me when I shared it on Instagram recently.
Yeah.
But that's definitely what my day looks like. It looks like I'm a mum when I wake up. I try to take care of myself in the morning as well. I do group PT or Pilates or whatever it is, go for a walk. And then once I start getting started with my work day, I work on the marketing for the studios.
Yeah.
I work on like the bigger vision for the studios and the academy as well. And then, I'm very good at delegating. I'm a very fast mover, as you said. And I appreciate that you think that me doing that is good, because some people think I'm chaotic, which I am, but I actually love it. And I can only really work with people who are happy to like pivot with me, because that's how I work. I move fast. And if I want to do something, if I say I'm going to do something, I always, follow through. And sometimes it just needs to like happen quicker, so that there's no time for it to not happen at all.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Do you think that because of like the quick decision making, do you think it's because you know what your overall like vision for where you're going is, or do you just kind of like follow what's in front of you, what feels good at the time, or do you kind of like have an overall picture and you're just like, if it fits into it, like, yeah, we're doing it?
That's a great question. I feel like it is intentional. Like what I do is intentional. The way my brain works is that I can zoom out and see a big picture.
Yeah.
But I also follow my gut.
Yeah.
So when I hear an idea or I think of an idea, I can like maths it all in my mind to see like where it could go, how scalable it would be, like how it would help with like what I'm doing, how it would fit into like my values and all the things I want to achieve.
Yeah.
And then I'll execute it based on that. So it's almost like I'm calculating the return on investment of going down that path.
Yeah.
In my brain. And then, and then there's definitely like a a gut kind of instinct. I've found when I don't follow that gut instinct is bad news.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree. And I think in business, it's so important to listen to that gut instinct. Do you think you've gotten better and quicker at doing that calculating as you've done it?
Absolutely. Like, I think it's a confidence thing. So I think as I've done it more and more, it's almost like a muscle in your body. Like, the more you work out that muscle, the stronger it's going to get. It's kind of the same. It's like when I did the first studio, or even when I did like businesses before that, sometimes it didn't like work out as I had planned or how I had thought it would work out. And then with the studio, once it started to work out, and then I did something else and it worked out and worked out, it's like become like a strength where I can really see how it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And has your self-trust been kind of affected as you've gone into all of these businesses, or have you always just been like, yeah, I back myself, like, let's do it?
I think that the self-trust has grown with the businesses.
Yeah.
There's been lots of lessons along the way, lots of fuck-ups, but I've definitely learnt, I've taken those learnings on, and it's made it like easier to have that. And every time I do something and I kind of like go up a step, like I remember being overseas and my dad's friend asked me like, oh, what do you want to do? And I was like, I just really want to have the freedom to travel the world like this lady I know. So maybe I'll just have like, you know, a fitness studio or something like that, like something like that, I said. And yeah, I didn't really fully believe in my head I could ever have that. Like I don't know, it just wasn't there. And then when I did that one, then I was like, oh wait, I want more. Like I want to do something more. I want to do this business. I want to do that. And every time I've kind of like done the next thing, it's like built my confidence up more.
Mm-hmm. And when you were starting your first Inflow studio, did you have the vision of it being like what it is? Or did you kind of, a second studio was like on the table and then it's turned into like, let's open up like a bunch and have it everywhere?
It's definitely been, it hasn't been a super simple journey. So when we opened the first studio, it was really, really hard, like doing it on my own with no experience. Like my husband was there to help me and support me, but I was sort of like steering the ship.
Yeah.
Doing it on my own, not really knowing anyone on the Sunshine Coast, like just really trusting, like almost killed me, right?
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. And after I had done it, me and my husband both agreed that we would never open another studio.
Oh my gosh.
Unless we had someone else to be the face of the business.
Yeah, okay.
And we never actively pursued that. I find it quite difficult to come across someone who has a good management style business mind and is good instructor as well, has passion for Pilates. So yeah, we were kind of like, we'll never open one just ourselves again. We'll do it with a partner where they're like the face of it, the managing partner.
Yeah.
And so we had the first studio for 4 years.
Yeah.
Before we did anything. And I did the app like within that 4 years as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Elise came along and she was an amazing manager at our studio. And we kind of knew that she was just going to outgrow that role really quickly, or she would leave.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, well, she could be an amazing, like have an amazing role where she's a managing director. And so, yeah, that's when we kind of like brought her on. And then even when we brought her on to do that studio, we didn't really have like, we weren't like, okay, cool, now we're going to like scale, grow. We just like did that one. It was going really well. And then we saw this space and we were like, oh, Budrum would be great. Like,
Yeah, okay.
and then we just were like, oh, should we do it? Shouldn't we? Then we did it.
Yeah.
And then sort of the same with Kingaroy. Like I was approached. And, you know, I really had to think about it. Like, do I want to do this?
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, we're going to do it.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's definitely hasn't been like a plan of like, oh, we want to have this many studios. Like I've always wanted them to be really, I've always wanted them to have a face. I've wanted them to be like community orientated, to have personality, to have everyone to have like the freedom to have their own flair and that sort of thing. So that's probably like within my values what I wanted to keep it as.
Yeah. And I think that like that's a testament to any good business that you don't just want to like, it's that quality over quantity type of like mentality that you didn't want to just go and spread it everywhere because you wanted it to be like top quality as if it was your own studio. And that's not easy to find when it's someone working for you and working with you, I guess. Yeah, wow, that's such an interesting story. I love hearing that. And when you're at the start, you mentioned that you didn't want to open a second studio by yourselves again. What were your challenges when you were doing that? Because I imagine at the start, like you would have, obviously it was a huge risk, which we heard about in episode 1, but what, like you would have been excited, you would have had this massive dream, so it would have been quite like cool to do. What were your challenges and what were like the things that you just weren't expecting to not enjoy?
Okay, so I guess when we first, so the backstory for Inflow is that we decided we wanted to move to the coast, saw that there was a gap here, and we're like, okay, we're going to do it. Came here with our small amount of money and started looking for spaces. So we found this amazing location. This was like the first like really hard thing. We found this amazing location. Like sometimes when you find a location, you like visualize everything. You're like, oh, we could have like this here and a coffee cart there and like da-da-da. And I think like just before we signed the lease, there had been like a few things with the lease and things like that. And I just said to my husband, like, I just don't, something doesn't feel right in my gut about this. We weren't super familiar with the areas. And so it was in the industrial area in Caloundra.
Yeah.
And so we just pulled the pin based on that feeling.
Yeah.
And I called the real estate and I was like, show me everything you have. Anything, even if it's not in our specs.
Yeah.
He lined up between the real estates we've been speaking to, he lined up 11 viewings that day.
Wow.
And we went and saw all of them.
Yeah.
And then the last one we looked at, which wasn't on the market, was where the studio ended up.
Oh my gosh.
And if we had have gone with that original space, not only would have it cost us a lot more money to get to where it needed to be, it also just wouldn't have been as good because we came to realise that people probably wouldn't travel out to the industrial area as much. So that was like one of our first like big kind of like hurdles, like even before we started.
Yeah, wow.
I think like some of the other stuff is that we ordered machines from overseas that weren't as of a high quality as we would have wanted them to be. So we spent the first 2 years fixing the machines a lot, like in our downtime, and trying to like figure out solutions and like how we'd be able to afford more machines because they're very expensive. So it was definitely a big lesson. I mean, it did feel really scary. I think that I definitely overworked myself.
Yeah.
To the point where I was like taking phone calls at like 9:30 at night on the weekend and things like that. And I think that was a big lesson for me. I think when people would say like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, I can't believe you've answered your phone at this time, it validated me doing that. But actually it wasn't probably great for my own personal mental health. And then probably the other thing is navigating the relationship between my husband and myself
Yeah.
going into business together.
Yeah.
I've had lots of conversations with people, and often like husband, wife, or like but people who are partners, whatever, don't really work that well together.
Yeah. Okay.
And my partner's dad at the start, he told us like, because we were butting heads a lot.
Yeah.
He told us like, hey, if you guys want this to work, one of you has to be the boss and take on the risk, and the other one has to like take a step back and let the other one make the decisions.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my husband like was like, okay, you can be the decision maker. And so that was really helpful, but it was definitely super hard navigating in the first few years, especially when he was working in the business, because all of a sudden the expectations from me was like I was in boss mode, and my expectations of him were like of my husband, but also of like my employee essentially, because he was on the sales and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was like quite a difficult hurdle to get over.
Yeah, wow. And I guess that would have taken a lot of work outside of building a whole studio and working together on the relationship to make sure that when you're outside of those hours that like, wow.
Yeah, and I think we still work on that. Like, we can so easily get consumed by like work stuff. He works separately now, but he's still like involved to an extent.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes like we get caught up in ideas, and we have a very different way of thinking. So we still butt heads and stuff sometimes, but yeah, it's definitely just something to be mindful of, because it's actually sometimes, like, I'm not a relationship coach, but like sometimes it's the easiest thing to fall into is talking about your business with your partner.
Yeah.
And not talking about like other things.
Yeah, you kind of lose that, especially when it becomes something that you have in common. Like everything revolves around that, and it's what like consumes both of your days. So it's totally fair that happens, but trying to stray away from that and find things that you have in common outside of that, and like things that you enjoy talking about, is not an easy thing to do, especially when you're at the start of a business and you are working long hours and all of that kind of thing. You don't have much time outside of your days to be like, oh, I did this, this and this. Like, you've got nothing to really catch them up on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I imagine that it would be such a huge work in progress, and probably something that you weren't expecting jumping into that, right?
No, I think at the start when we jumped into it together, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to have like a partner who wants to, who would do this with me, like not sort of like someone who's like, oh no, we have to stay in the city and like, because he's in corporate or whatever. Nothing wrong with that, obviously. Yeah. But I was like, oh, I just can't believe like I have someone who would just like do this and do a business with me, and like it was my dream and stuff to have someone who wanted to like do that sort of stuff with me. So yeah, I definitely didn't expect I guess the conflict that's come from it or has been in it from the past. But yeah, it's been a big learning, that's for sure.
Yeah. Wow. And so when you started and you were like jumping into the business, were there things that you really fell in love with as a business owner? Like, were there things that you were really like pulled to? Was it the instructing that you really loved when you started the studio, or was that when you knew that like you wanted to sort of be stepping back and managing the operations of all of these businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I really loved the instructing part of it at the start. I did do a lot of classes at the start, took on like a lot of responsibility. When we first opened, we only had 3 of us. And now we've got, over the 3 studios at the moment, we've got around 25 of us. So, so I did teach a lot at the start and I really loved it. I always found that, and I still find this today, is that when I teach, it always puts me in a good mood.
Yeah.
I love connecting with people. I love the way that I can make them feel during a class. And so I did really love that. But I also just really loved the variety.
Yeah.
So I loved, I built the website, did all the system setups, all the branding and everything was all done. Like, obviously my husband had input and stuff.
Yeah.
He helped so much, but it was all kind of like from my brain. And that really, like, that creative side of it really was enjoyable.
Yeah.
And then I think when we first launched our first, like, sort of lead generation for Caloundra, when we got our first sign up, I remember just like the feeling of it and being like, oh my God, it's actually working. Like, and it was like this guy and he was like, oh, I want to sign my like wife up or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I still remember it. And I think that like before we opened the doors, that was such a driver. We signed up 180 people.
Wow.
Before we even, like before the space was even finished.
Yeah.
So we had people who had signed up for our program who just were like nosy and wanted to come have a look around, come and walk through the construction site.
Oh my gosh.
And actually one of those people is still with us today, 6 years later. She's actually an instructor now.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that side of it was really cool. I feel like I lost my train of thought a little bit there, but
right.
I think that, yeah, that feeling of like, of selling the product and then providing like such a winning product. And then also once we opened, we had so many people who gave us feedback, like incredible feedback, not just on what we had built, but also on the way that the form of movement had impacted them. Like we had a lady who had like chronic pain in her back, and like after 4 weeks she was like, oh, I can garden again. She's like, it's not completely gone, like, but she's like, I can move again. We had like a chef, I remember we had all these different people with different things, and they were like, this is amazing. And still 5 years on, last year I had one of our founding members sit down with me, and she shared with me that when she first came to the studio, she was in like a really bad DV situation. She was really scared all the time, and Inflow was the only place she could come that she felt safe, and that she always felt like it was a safe place as well, and that she could just come and not worry about that. And yeah, like, I mean, that was 4 or 5 years of like her coming and having that feeling.
Yeah.
And that just felt so like amazing to me that we could create this space that was like that for people.
Yeah. And I'm sure that would have just been like, this is why we do it. Like that makes
so rewarding.
It so worth it.
Yeah. It gives it purpose. Like, of course, in business, I'll never shy away from the fact, like, we're not going to run a business if it's not making money, because like we all need to survive. But those kinds of things, like for me, the impact that you can have on people like provides the purpose for me to keep going and to want to like impact even more. Yeah.
Hold that vision and keep showing up on the hard, challenging days, because I'm sure that there is lots of those, which we're about to get into. You mentioned that you had a founding member become a Pilates instructor. What was that like, experiencing that journey from like having this amazing vision of how you want to impact people, and then knowing that something that you've created has impacted someone to the point of then wanting to get into that space?
It's been like probably one of my biggest joys. To see that. So there's a few journeys that I've watched. So one was that lady, and she's actually one of my dearest friends. She's 60.
Oh my goodness.
And she's like my Sunshine Coast mum.
Yeah.
And I remember when she first started, so she's deaf in one ear.
Yeah.
She's quirky. She's just got like a big, loud personality. And when she first started, she was really bad at Pilates. Like she came with her three friends and they used to like chat during class and I'd be like trying to direct her and she'd just be doing her own thing. And then maybe like 6 months later, she sat down at my desk, right at a reception or whatever.
Yeah.
And she was like, I've had an epiphany. I know what I want to do. I want to be an instructor. Like I want to be the older instructor that can like, you know, makes people see what they can do and what they can be.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, let's do it. And I said, you should start with mat. And I said, there's this course in Brisbane I've been wanting to do. I've done my mat training, but I want to do this more in-depth mat training because I think it's important. And why don't we do it together? So we signed up to it together. And like we drove to the course like every weekend together. We went to like the mentoring sessions together. And she would like pack me like snacks and stuff. Just like literally like a mum.
We love that.
We love that. And yeah, I watched her like learn and become better at Pilates and just become like such an amazing instructor. And she teaches like a lot of our classes at Caloundra. And I would say that she has become the face of Caloundra.
Yeah.
She is like the community. She like drives it. She knows everybody. She notices when people are missing. She's a true community builder. And so that's been like really beautiful. And I think that that's like something I'm really passionate about, you know, even with my partners and stuff, like seeing someone go from, you know, managing a studio to owning a studio. It's just so like potent and powerful to see the transition of like when someone realizes what they can do. And I think that that's something I wasn't expecting, was to partner with so many people. And like right now I've got 3 business partners, 3 separate business partners, 4, including my husband.
Yeah.
But, you know, being able to collaborate and partner with people is just like me. And it was something that I didn't realize and didn't, you know, kind of like know until maybe last year or something, that I was like, oh, I'd actually rather do this with someone than do it on my own.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have that quality and have those like wins than like the financial benefit of owning something on your own.
Yeah.
So, and then I feel like that's when I've kind of realized how much I love mentoring people in a business capacity, because I just love seeing when people are passionate about something, like I just want to see them win, and I just want to see them like gain the confidence to be able to like make that into whatever they want to make it in, like however big it is, or even if it's just to supplement a wage, or if they want it to become a big business. Like I just love seeing it, and I love being able to be involved with that, I suppose.
And I think it's such a testament, like you say, you don't know that you're kind of missing that element, or that you even want that element until you've got it. But I think it's such a testament to the type of person you are and your own values, that the people that you have in your life have obviously clicked with you and been attracted to you for a reason. And I think just when you're so like aligned with your vision, and you're doing and you're living out your why, I think it really all just kind of falls into place. The types of people that come into your life, they're just like next level humans, because you're living like your absolute best. And I think that is, it's such a testament to who you are, and everyone is lucky to be able to have you in their life as either a business partner or working with you one-on-one. Like, it's so incredible, and you have so much to share. And I think it says a lot about you. I hear this a lot, that you are one of the most amazing people to have in your corner because you're so supportive, even to other business owners that would be considered competition for you. What has that kind of been like, kind of navigating? I know that it would come really, really natural to you, but how do you kind of respond to other business owners that sort of come to you and they want to learn from you? Do you get like weird responses from other people being like, why are you helping them? Or like,
Yeah, like it does come naturally, but do you know what? I'm just going to be like really honest. Sometimes I get that feeling like, oh, I just wish you wouldn't do that because I don't want to I'm not a competitive person.
yeah.
So I just want to just kind of like be really candid about that because I'm not just like this perfect human who's just like, oh yeah, like love, peace and joy, like whatever. It's like I do sometimes have the feeling where I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit worried about that, or I feel a bit like, oh, I wish that wasn't so close or something like that. But but ultimately I always check myself because I've experienced gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And I've seen it and I don't like it. Yeah. And it's just, I never want to be like that. So, yeah, I guess, just be candid about it. It's not always just like to come naturally. But I definitely am such a big advocate, and like what I have realized in the space that I'm in is that there is actually enough room for all of us, and that I know that when I walk into my studios, they like my Clowntra studio is me. Like it holds a presence that is very much my personality.
Yeah.
And our other two studios hold the foundations of that, but then they also hold my business partner's personality as well. And I think that when other people open studios, that will happen with them as well. And we're not everybody's cup of tea. Like I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I want people to be able to experience the movement with someone who is their cup of tea.
Yeah.
And if our capacity is 200 members or 250 members, like there's a lot more people than that just in this simple area. Yeah. So why not like kind of allow the space for others to come and have that really clean energy, because then you'll just draw more people to you who are your cup of tea, and then people who aren't, they'll have somewhere else to go.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you have been so brutally honest in saying that it's not always like, oh, yes, like I'm so happy for you. Like obviously you are happy for them, but it doesn't, it's not to say that having feelings of like, oh, like that kind of hurts isn't allowed either. And I think it's what you do with that, and just checking yourself and being like, you know what, like if someone else is contributing to my bigger why, like that's just better for the world in general, which is amazing. And like you say, it really is a massive personality thing, and especially with group sort of training gyms or like boutique fitness clubs, things like that. It really is all about the community, and it says so much about your personality, which is amazing. I would love to dive into a topic that I'm excited to hear what you have to say about. What are some of the things along your journey that you've found that either you've really fucked up or you've found some of your weaknesses that like you didn't know existed along the track?
Yeah. Okay, I'll start with my weaknesses.
Yeah.
So my weaknesses are I'm not...
I love this. I've got 1, 2, 3.
I know what they are. So I'm not organised.
Okay.
Before I had Billy, I always just remembered everything in my brain.
Yeah.
And then after I had Billy, I tried to keep doing that, but then I just forgot everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not like a super organised person. I would love to be. Like I'd love to be neat and tidy and organised, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So with that one, like how I've combated it is a worked with people who are organized, but who also can, you know, balance me out.
Yeah.
But yeah, just definitely like when I was at uni, I would just do my assignments the night before.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I wouldn't usually go to class all the time.
Oh my gosh, you would have stressed me out.
Yeah, I think that's the reaction a lot of people have to me sometimes. I love just doing things I don't know if candid's the right word. I love just doing things like sporadically.
Yeah. Off the cuff.
Yeah, I said a speech at my wedding.
Yeah.
That wasn't planned. Yeah, I guess. So yeah, I'm just not organized. That's one weakness. My second weakness is that it's a strength and a weakness. So one of my strengths is that I can really zoom out and big picture think.
Yeah.
Big picture. Weakness is not great attention to detail. I was just discussing with the girls before that I can't bake.
Yes.
I am not going to stand there and measure things.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can cook some things like that are savory, you know, like because you have more freedom with that.
Measure with your heart.
I can't, measure with your heart. Exactly. I cannot do baking, and often like I'll start to bake a brownie, even like a box one or something, and I'll go, oh, I've only got one small egg instead of two medium eggs. And then I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll just add some extra water in there. Maybe that'll work. And yeah, it's always just a flop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found in business that, I don't have attention to detail. So I have terrible spelling. I struggle when people start to get bogged down in the details because I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. In my mind, I'm like prioritizing things. Like it's like a constant thing where it's like, okay, wait, priority.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's definitely like sometimes just things aren't as polished, you know, as I'd like them to be because I don't have that attention to detail, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So with these weaknesses, I mean, it's not very often that I would ask someone that question. You're like, okay, this is number one, this is number two. But all I'm hearing is that knowing your weaknesses is actually beneficial to running a business. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that like knowing your weaknesses is important. And I think that I think it's refreshing when people speak about their weaknesses because obviously we always hear about like everyone's highlight reel and things like that. But, you know, just so you know, I've got more weaknesses than that, but we'll just talk on those ones. Yeah. But I think that for me within business, knowing my weaknesses means that I can hire or seek support from people who can like fill my weaknesses in or complement them. And yeah, it's sort of like I'm even just looking at getting a VA at the moment.
Yeah.
And just like almost like a personal assistant vibe.
Yeah.
But I know that for that person, I need them to be really organized and I need them to organize me. Yeah. Like I need them to be like, this is your schedule. Like I just need it to be really, you know, like that. And I need them to have the attention to detail. So yeah, I think it's really in the process of like who I collaborate with and mesh with and stuff is like people who can
fill in those gaps.
Who can fill in those gaps, but also who are happy to fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
Because they go, oh, but this is my strength. So I'm happy to fill in that gap. And sometimes I get caught down in the details and she can see the bigger vision. So I'm going to use her to benefit me and she's going to use me to benefit her.
Yeah, I love that. And I think anytime in my own business I've found that I'm like getting stuck at a certain place, whether that's like my income's not going up or like there's certain clients that I just can't seem to convert or something like that, I always look back at like where those gaps are. Like, okay, if if something isn't working, like, is there a system or is there organization or something like that needs to be done to be able to make space for that next thing? And I think knowing your weaknesses really comes in handy in that space, because then you can get someone to help you make sure that that's all seamless so that you can keep building on your dream and keep doing the things that you want to do. Otherwise you get capped out and you're kind of just like running around like a headless chook a bit, being like, I don't know why this isn't working for me. What's going on here? So I think it's, so important. Okay.
Love it.
Now, what are some of the biggest fuck ups you've had in your business, in your whole business journey, which is a long time?
Okay, so with the studios, they've always run like, sometimes I hate saying this, but sometimes it just feels like they've always flowed with ease.
Yeah, I love that.
From like a logistics standpoint, I think, like I mentioned earlier, one of my biggest fuck ups was buying machines that weren't top quality. Another one was not listening to my gut when hiring.
Yeah.
I hired someone and they were amazing, and then they weren't amazing for the reasons that I kind of felt in my gut might happen. And then it was because there was a small amount of us working at the studio at the time and they were taking a lot of classes. It was quite a hectic transition when we had to get rid of her.
Yeah.
Very quickly. And that was probably one of the hardest weeks of days of my career, was actually letting her go.
Yeah.
Just in general, because I'm very much a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Trying to think. Okay, so I did an app. I've got an app, and one of my big lessons I've learned is that I give very generously.
Yeah.
And sometimes I need to protect myself. So with my app, I had these people who were like the middleman between myself and the developers, right? Because developers don't really know how to communicate
Yeah, okay.
that well.
I have no idea how an app gets made, but yes.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And they were helping me. I told them all my ideas, and then there was a point where they decided that they were just going to do their own app.
Right.
And they had the relationship with developers. So all of a sudden I had no developers and I had no one as the middleman, and I had this app and I don't know how to code. And when their app popped up, it was like my IP and it had a lot of my ideas incorporated into it. So that was like, it was just very kind of traumatic in a way, because I trust so easily, and then that was broken, and it just felt like a big, it did feel like a big fuck up, because it felt like it's a lot of money to develop an app.
Yeah.
And I had to find a new developer, spend a lot more money, and a lot more time to kind of get it going again.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been just in my overall business journey, that's definitely been a big one.
Yeah, interesting. I remember you saying in the first episode that what's really important is nailing your niche and being the master of whatever you're doing, sort of thing. And I think you've got such a good example in doing inflow and then having it multiple times over. Have you found that each time the process gets better, and from your experiences you just know sort of what to do there?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like every studio launch has gotten easier and easier. One big fuck up that we had as well was with our booking system. We had one booking system and it just wasn't right.
Yeah.
So we had to move it to a different booking system, and it was during the opening of our second studio.
Oh, no.
And it didn't transfer everyone over properly. So we had all these payments coming out of people's accounts that were incorrect. People couldn't book into classes. People couldn't do all of this stuff. And it was like such a big learning and just like a really stressful time, because when you're messing with people's money, like people are understanding until the point where they're like, well, you're taking more money than you should have.
Yeah.
And when it's not intentional, it's like it's very hard to deal with.
Yeah.
When you have no control. So, but yeah, I mean, I think like each opening has gotten easier and easier. Each fit out has gotten easier and easier. I've definitely got like the process down pat, like a big operations manual with exactly what we do and how we do it and what works. And so, yeah, it kind of does feel like, I don't know if I love the saying, but like kind of like rinse and repeat. Like it's like, okay, we did it here. People, you know, loved it. So we're going to do it there. And I think doing it in Kingaroy will be like a real like test of that, because it's just like a replica of what we've done everywhere else. But I think the magic potion is that person who's in the space, who's the personality, and who is the community builder.
Yeah, yeah. I 100% agree. I'm from a fitness background as well, and you can tell in gyms, you know, like what type of community it is based on whoever's kind of leading it. And it's so evident, and it really, really shows in the way that members show up and how they interact with each other. And I think you guys nail it, which is amazing. But I'm sure it would have thrown an absolute spanner in the works when you've got your app and you've got all of these challenges there. How do you sort of find when a challenge pops up? We were talking about this, just us personally, the other day, how when you run a business, especially when you've actually got a space, random things pop up. Like I think you were saying like the roof was leaking or something like that. Random little things like that pop up that you just never expect when you're going into a business. You don't think of those types of things. Do you have sort of a bit of a like system that you go through when a big challenge comes up? Like, are you good at just internally processing it and going like, okay, this is what we've got to do? Do you go to your partner? Like, what does that sort of look like?
I'm a real get it done kind of gal. So when I'm actually really good in stressful situations at just like keeping quite cool, calm and collected and just like getting it done. I'm very solutions focused. So I'm just like, okay, this is a problem. Here's the solution options.
Yeah. Which
one are we going to do? Make a decision fast. Otherwise we're going to get decision fatigue and let's just like get it done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that it's probably an internal process I go through. So the other day, like you said, the aircon was leaking, the roof caved in.
Gosh.
And it's kind of like, okay, well, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Are we going to run classes with no aircon? Like, how are we going to approach this? How are we going to get it fixed? How are we going to get it done? I think it's just case by case because, like you said, it's stuff that you just don't know how it's going to go. But I definitely think like just in general in business, like I like to just hit things head on.
Yeah.
I can be quite blunt, I guess, but I always approach things with kindness.
Yeah.
And I think that, just sort of steering the ship in a way that is just like solutions focused is probably a strength of mine. And I can sometimes get frustrated when there's people or parties involved who are just complaining about the problem.
Yeah.
Versus like, okay, cool, like the problem's there. Like, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think like, I think a lot of people stray away from doing things like running a business and stuff like that because they get put off by the challenges that are going to come up. But I think, as you say, the problems are there regardless. And it's showing yourself like, okay, if something comes up, we're just going to work through it. And the more that you do that, the better you get at it. So I think the more you shy away from doing that, like it's only going to hurt yourself and you're never going to be able to do what you want to do because
Definitely.
you can never prepare yourself for all of the
Yeah.
things that come up. It's just like how you deal with it. And yeah, I
And
love
it's
that.
rewarding. Like problem solving
Totally.
is rewarding. Like when there's a problem and you solve it, like you feel good.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it just proves to you that like you can do it and like you've got everything that you need. You're capable of doing it, which is such a rewarding feeling. I love that. I think that is such an amazing insight into who you are, and I just think you're incredible. You're amazing.
Thank you.
You
It's
are
making me
amazing.
blush.
But yeah, I have just loved hearing about all of your business insights and hearing a little bit more about your story. And I think so many people will be able to learn from you.
Oh, thank you.